Understanding multiplication using the distributive property. Teachers, there will be 4 problems given. Each problem will be scaffolded until the last problem is independent practice. I have my learners fold a paper into fourths, and I use the last problem as a formative assessment. Learners, the objective of the day is to solve multiplication problems using the distributive property. Watch this only so you can see all the steps of the distributive property. We're going to solve the problem 41 times 6. In order to distribute the 6, we need to begin by taking the 41 in expanded form. 41 is the same thing as 40 plus 1. We're taking that in an expanded form and multiplying 41 times 6. After that step, the next step is to distribute the 6 to the 40, distribute the 6 to the 1. And you will see I did that by going 40 times 6, 1 times 6. It is still the same problem as 41 times 6. Now we solve for each section. We have 40 times 6. I did the base fact of 4 times 6. 4 times 6 is 24. That was the base fact. And then I walked my 0 to the end to get 240. 1 times 6 is 6. Therefore, when I add those two together, I know that 41 times 6 is 246. All right, I went through that very quickly. I wanted you to watch only. We are now going to go into one that we will do together. So your pencils are out. Go ahead and write down 12 times 3. At the top of your page, 12 times 3. From this problem, the first thing we need to do is not think of the number 12 as that big, confusing number 12. We're going to write it in expanded form so that it can make a little more sense to us. So 12 written in expanded form is 10 plus 2. Underneath that number 12, write 10 plus 2. The next step is to show that 10 plus 2 is the number 12. So we're going to put parentheses around 10 plus 2. Put the parentheses around 10 plus 2, and then you're going to multiply that times 3. That's the first step in the distributive property. Now we're going to actually work on distributing the 3 to each one of those numbers. We're going to distribute the 3 times 10, 3 times 2. And I'll show you what that looks like, and you're going to copy this. So let's go ahead and look at the distributive property. Right now we distributed 10 times 3 by distributing right there. Then we distributed 3 times 2. So copy it down, 10 times 3 in parentheses to show that's one problem, plus 2 times 3 in parentheses to show it's the second problem. But you will see that 10 plus 2 is still the number 12. We are still doing 12 times 3. Now for the next step, we have 10 times 3 plus 2 times 3. We now need to solve 10 times 3. 10 times 3, 10, 20, 30, 3 tens becomes 30. Now think, 2 times 3. 2 times 3, 2, 4, 6, becomes 6. So can you now solve 30 plus 6 to get your final answer for 12 times 3? 30 plus 6 becomes, you got it, 36. 12 times 3 equals 36. 12, 24, 36. Let's go ahead and move on to our second problem that we're going to work on together. So distributive property using 22 times 7. So write that down. 22 times 7. The first step we need to work on is that number 22 needs to be written in expanded form. So think of 22 in expanded form would become, you're right, 20 plus 2. Go ahead and show that in expanded form, 20 plus 2 in parentheses to show that it is the number 22. We are still multiplying 22 times 7. Include the multiplication times 7. Next comes the distributive property. So the next step we're going to do is we are going to distribute the 7 to the 20 and the 7 to the 2. In order to do that, then we're going to have 20 times 7. Write that down in parentheses. 20 times 7. We're going to add that to the multiplication problem, 2 times 7. We distributed it out 7 to the 2. 2 times 7. So you've copied those two problems down. We're now going to add them together. So think 20 times 7. What will that be? When we do this, we start with our base fact. So start with the base fact of 2 times 7 and write down the base fact. You don't have to worry about the 0 till the end. 2 times 7, 7 doubled is 14. 2 times 7 is 14. And then since we have the 1 0, we're going to add 0 after that. 20 times 7 is 140. 2 times 7, we just did that. 7 doubled, 14. Now we're going to add 140 plus 14. Some of you might be able to add thinking in your head, well, I know I have only 100. Then I have how many are in the tens place and how many are the ones place. For me, I might need to just write it to the side, making sure I line up everything in the hundreds spot, everything in the tens spot. So I'm going to make sure I put 14 right underneath the tens and 4 ones. And then I will need to add this up to the side. Others, might have been fine to do that. So let's see, 4 plus 0 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. 1 plus nothing is 1. I now know that 22 times 7 is 154. Take a second to write that down and let's go on to the next problem. We're going to work on using the distributive property with 73 times 5. So let's start by doing 73. Because we're going to need to distribute the 5 out, we can't start with this big confusing number of 73. To make it easier, we need to do it in expanded form. So begin writing 73 in expanded form. $70 plus 3. We're going to put that in parentheses to remind ourselves that 70 plus 3 is the same thing as 73. We're still going to multiply it by the number 5. 70 plus 3 times 5. Now we're going to work on that distributive property. 5 is going to distribute out to each one of those numbers. So let's do 70 times 5 as the first part of our distributive property. 70 times 5, in parentheses is the first one. Just like it was 70 plus 3, we're going to still add that to the next multiplication problem that we distributed the 5 to the 3. 3 times 5. Now that you have those two numbers, 70 times 5, 3 times 5, we now need to go and solve for each. So think to yourself, what is 70 times 5? Base fact. 7 times 5. Start there. 7 times 5. 5, 10. Counting by 5s is 35. Walk your 0 to the end, 350. Now let's solve for 3 times 5. 3 times 5, 5, 10, 15. Solving 315 plus 15. Some of you might be able to see that 15 is 10 plus 5. 350 plus 10 becomes 360 plus 5, 365. Sometimes I need to write things down because I'm not there yet. So I might need to just write down and put my 10s underneath my 10s, my 1s underneath my 1s, and we end up with 365. All right, now I'm going to walk through this last problem you're going to do on your own. It will be possibly turned into your teacher so that she can see how well you've started to understand the distributive property. What I would recommend is to look back to this problem. Connect to everything we did so far. It's the same process, just new numbers. So, distributive property, question number 4, write down 16 times 4. In order to be able to distribute the 4, you're going to have to do something with that 16. And I've helped you here. What was that first step we did with the 16 into expanded form? Once you have it in expanded form, then you need to distribute the 4 out. Distribute the 4, distribute the 4. Something times something, something times something. I'll give you a few minutes to work on this. When you have finished, quietly sneak back to your seat and make sure you followed your teacher's directions. Thank you very much, and I hope you understand how to solve multiplication problems using the distributive property. You may pause the video if you need to see the problem for longer.